Welcome to Literal BS, your weekly deep dive into the stories shaping the Lone Star State and beyond. I'm your host, Rob. Today, we're tackling a topic that sparked heated debate, legal challenges, and a whole lot of head-scratching. The new Texas law mandating the display of the Ten Commandments in every single public school classroom. It's a move that proponents say harks back to America's moral foundations, while opponents warn of a dangerous erosion of the separation of church and state. But there's another layer to this, one that's particularly frustrating for many Texans. The undeniable hypocrisy of some of the very leaders pushing this agenda. Let's start with the facts. Texas Governor Greg Abbott recently signed Senate Bill 10 into law. As of September 1, 2025, every public elementary and secondary school classroom in Texas will be required to conspicuously display a durable poster or framed copy of the Ten Commandments. The law even specifies the size, at least 16 by 20 inches, and the exact text to be used, which is a specific Protestant version. Now, this isn't a new idea. There's been a growing movement in conservative states to reintroduce religious displays and practices into public schools. Texas already passed a law in 2021 requiring, "In God We Trust" signs if donated. And the State Board of Education approved Bible-infused teaching materials in 2024. Senate Bill 10 takes it a significant step further. The proponents of this bill, like Senator Phil King and Representative Candy Noble, argue that the Ten Commandments are fundamental to American history, law, and morality. They often cite the 2022 Supreme Court case, Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, which allowed a football coach to pray on the field, as having opened the door for such displays, supposedly overturning precedents like Stone versus Graham from 1980, which previously prohibited Ten Commandments displays in public schools. However, legal experts and civil liberties groups strongly disagree. They argue that Kennedy versus Bremerton was about a coach's private religious exercise, not government-mandated religious instruction in classrooms. They point to the core principle of the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, which prevents the government from establishing or endorsing a religion. Similar laws in other states, like Louisiana's, have already been struck down by federal courts, including the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which also covers Texas. Just last month, that court unanimously ruled against Louisiana's law, stating that the display qualifies as a religious display and subjects impressionable schoolchildren to unwelcome religious exercises. Despite this, Texas is forging ahead, with Attorney General Liz Murrell vowing to defend the law, even if it means taking it to the U.S. Supreme Court. This is far from settled. This is where the narrative shifts from legal theory to practical reality, and for many, the glaring hypocrisy of it all. Our leaders want every child in Texas schools to stare daily at a list of moral directives. Yet how well do they uphold these very same commandments? Let's look at a few examples without naming names and wading into specific allegations, but broadly referencing the principles. Take the commandment, "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." In the world of modern politics, we see a constant barrage of misinformation, character assassinations, and outright lies. Political campaigns are often built on distorting opponents' records or creating narratives that are far from the truth. How can we expect children to internalize the importance of truthfulness when they see their elected officials regularly engaging in what could be described as bearing false witness? Then there's "Thou shalt not steal." This isn't just about shoplifting. It can extend to misappropriation of public funds, cronyism that benefits political allies at taxpayer expense, or legislative actions that enrich a select few. We've seen numerous instances of public officials facing scrutiny, investigations, or even convictions related to financial improprieties or abuse of power. Consider "Honor thy father and thy mother." While seemingly straightforward, this commandment speaks to respect for authority and tradition. Yet, in our political discourse, we often witness a breakdown of respectful dialogue, even among those in positions of power. The very foundations of democratic institutions are sometimes undermined by rhetoric that disrespects established norms and processes. And let's not forget the irony pointed out by State Representative James Tallarico, a Democrat from Austin, during the debate over Senate Bill 10. He highlighted that the bill preliminarily passed the House on the Jewish Sabbath day, a day on which the Ten Commandments explicitly forbid work. The very act of pushing this bill forward, he argued, was a violation of one of the commandments it seeks to impose. This isn't just about one politician, but it speaks to a broader cultural context where the outward display of religious adherence sometimes trumps the actual living out of its principles. The core of the issue for many is this: if these commandments are truly meant to guide moral conduct, then the expectation should apply universally, especially to those who craft and enforce our laws. When the public perceives a disconnect between the values being preached and the actions of the preachers, it doesn't foster moral improvement. It breeds cynicism. It makes the display feel less like a genuine commitment to moral education and more like a political statement, a cultural weapon in a larger battle. So what are the broader implications of this law? Beyond the legal challenges and the questions of hypocrisy, there are concerns about the impact on students. Texas is incredibly diverse, with students from a multitude of faiths: Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and many who identify as non-religious. Forcing a specific version of the Ten Commandments, primarily associated with Protestant Christianity, onto every classroom wall can alienate and marginalize students who do not share those beliefs. As one plaintiff in the lawsuit challenging the law, Rabbi Maranathan, stated, "I am deeply concerned that SB 10 will impose another faith scripture on students for nearly every hour of the school day." And Pastor Griff Martin, another plaintiff, called it un-American and un-Baptist, arguing it undermines the separation of church and state as a bedrock principle of my family's Baptist heritage. This isn't about being anti-religion. Many religious leaders and organizations actively oppose these kinds of mandates because they believe true faith cannot be coerced by the government. They see it as a violation of religious freedom, not a promotion of it. For children, this can create a sense of being othered if their family's faith or non-belief doesn't align with the text on the wall. It sends a message that one particular set of religious beliefs is sanctioned and preferred by the state, potentially undermining the inclusive and welcoming environment that public schools are meant to provide for all students. Ultimately, this law, while framed as a moral imperative, appears to be a costly, legally vulnerable, and deeply divisive measure. It's a battle that will undoubtedly continue in the courts, and one that highlights a fundamental tension in our society about the role of faith in public life, especially when the actions of those in power seem to contradict the very principles they wish to impose on others. And that's all for this episode of Literal BS. Whether you agree with the law or stand against it, one thing is clear: when leaders demand moral adherence they themselves struggle to embody, the message gets lost in the noise of hypocrisy. We'll be watching closely as this unfolds in the courts. This is Rob. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and remember, principles like laws are only as strong as the integrity of those who champion them.